Hello, thank you for being here with me today. I'm here with former state representative and former Senator Edward Early, who served the 29th Legislative District from Allegheny County from the years 1971 to 1974, and the 40th Senatorial District, serving Allegheny, Armstrong, and Westmoreland counties from 1975 through 1986. We're here in Pittsburgh today, and we're happy to be here.
Well, welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much. I wanted to begin by asking you about your childhood and your family life and how you feel that prepared you for public service.
My childhood, I was a Pittsburgher. I was raised on the north side of Pittsburgh, and went to Pittsburgh schools up until the 8th grade, and then we moved to the township, as many people did. You move as soon as your dad gets a job, you move out of Pittsburgh, which is unfortunate. But that's also what I did, and I have to say, my political career really started in high school. I ran for a class office. I was called the Secretary of Traffic. Yeah, I'm impressive, isn't it? Yeah, I ran for the Secretary of Traffic, and I won by 2 votes. There were probably 1,200 votes cast. And I won by 2, so I'm known as a landslide. And that really started it. I really enjoyed that for a week. I probably didn't do anything but campaign in school and make posters and do whatever I had to do. In fact, one of the teachers said, if you'd work this hard on your schoolwork, you'd be very successful. And she was probably right. Yes. So, yeah, I knew then I wanted to go into politics. But as you know, you have to wait your turn and wait your time. I went on to Duquesne University, which I graduated with a bachelor's degree in education. I never used it. I went into business. I went into the hardware business, where I made sufficient money to go into politics. And I've always said, there's one way you can end up with a small fortune in politics. And that's start with a large one. Because you don't make money in politics. That's and that's a misnomer. Most people think you go in politics to make money. That's really not true. That's not the case. And so I went into the hardware business to make myself some money to afford a campaign. And as you know from talking to politicians, your first campaign you pay for. Yeah, you don't have lobbyists coming and saying, here, we'd like to give you money, or a party giving you money. That wasn't the case. I had to do it on my own. And that was in 1968. I ran against an incumbent of 22 years. He was a 22-year incumbent. And I lost that one, but I didn't lose by much. And so I was preparing myself for the next 2 years. And 2 years later, the incumbent, who I almost beat, he didn't run. He decided he wasn't going to run. So I really had a clear path to it. And got elected then in 1970. And that's interesting. Now, I'll be unique from those people you talk to. I was a Democrat who got elected in a Republican area. First Democrat ever to win the seat. And that's difficult. That is very, very difficult, because your colleagues think because you're a Democrat, you have to vote with the Democrats. But when you're a Democrat who got elected in a Republican area, you have to think of your constituents. So it's a tough situation. You have to balance it. You can't make too many enemies there, because you won't accomplish anything. Plus the fact, who wants to go through life with people mad at you all the time? And it was difficult, and especially since it was unique that here I am, my first term, Democrat winning in a Republican area, and one of the first votes we have is the income tax. That was in 1971. The income tax. And Pennsylvania, up until that time, had no income tax. That was the first income tax that Pennsylvania had. And the previous administration, which was Governor Schaefer, he left us with a $700 million deficit. Now, at the time, governors could not run for re-election. I don't know if I'm giving a history lesson here, but governors could not run for re-election. And so, in all fairness to Schaefer, he did try to get an income tax enacted his last 2 years in office, but the legislature wouldn't give it to him, because he was lame duck. He wasn't going to be around, so they would not give him the votes for an income tax. So when we took over in '70, we were $700 million in the bucket. So one of the first votes that had to be cast was for the state income tax, and being a Democrat and in a Democrat majority. Now, we as Democrats, we controlled the governor's office through Governor Shep. We controlled the House and the Senate. We had it all. So it was up to us to perform. When the governor presented the income tax, I said, I can't vote for it. It really was too high. Now, in all fairness, I didn't promise my constituents I wouldn't vote for an income tax, which was an issue during the campaign, because everyone knew that the income tax was only rising. I did not tell them that I would not vote for it, or I didn't tell my constituents I would not. I didn't tell them I would. I was free and clear. But what I discovered is the governor, for his credit for himself, he went for a whole bunch. He went for a big budget, he went for a big income tax, knowing in 4 years he was going to run for re-election, and he was going to then cut back on the income tax. And history proved me right. He did. When he ran for re-election, he cut the income tax back. So in 71, I said, I can't vote for this. It's too high. Cut the budget, and they used the rationalization that the previous administration left us with $700 million in the hole. So that was their rationale to pass it. But my rationale was, okay, I can vote for it, but let's cut back on this budget because it was excess. Now that's difficult. That's difficult to sit in a caucus where your party's expected to carry the day, both House, Senate, and a governor, and you tell your supposedly friends, you can't do it. I just can't vote for it. And that was tough. That was very, very tough. I'm not one who will shy away, but it was tough. And it even ended up, which is a funny story, even ended in a fist fight. A fist fight. And that came when we passed the income tax, and I did vote against it, and created some enemies, unfortunately, but only to find out it became unconstitutional. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that our first income tax was unconstitutional, and we had to go back in August to vote again. Now it's a hot summer day in August. No one wanted to come back and vote for it, but we had to come back and do it again. Again, I voted, and then told him, I can't vote for this. And a gentleman who, I won't mention his name, but his nickname was Speedo. So does that tell you something? Speedo has decided that he didn't like the way, he didn't like me, period. And Speedo decided that he was going to settle this once and for all, and settle it outside, and challenged me. And I'm on my way out with the realization that I'm going to get my rear end kicked. Because do you want to fight someone whose nickname is Speedo? Anything worse than that was his name was Killer or something. Neither of the two was I interested in. But on the way out, Speedo decided we're gonna fight right then in the hall and not in the parking lot, which I was surprised, and I would say pleasantly surprised. So it didn't amount to a few punches, and then both of us probably bounced off the marble walls, and that was the end of it. So. To me, it's an amusing story with, and fortunately the newspapers were on strike at the time, which worked out in my favor, because I don't know if they would declare me the winner or the loser, but they were on strike, so really it didn't get back to the district then. But there were other votes that I supported the Democratic Party as much as I could. I would support the party, but also too I couldn't vote for the budget. Because I was always under the assumption, if you vote for the budget, you're obligated to vote for the taxes. And a lot of times the budget vote is as tough as a tax vote. And I never looked at it. I always said, if you vote for the budget, you're voting to spend the money, you're obligated to vote to generate the cash to do it. Now I noticed, I've been reading the newspaper where the House did vote last week for the governor's budget. And I don't think there will be sufficient votes to pass the taxes that I understand are going to be necessary to do it. But that's present. You want to talk history. But there's a parallel there. There is a parallel. And I always watched myself that I did not vote for spending, even though I would like to, and I would like to put money back to my district, which is the name of the game. They send you to Harrisburg, which is also too is something you have to watch. You have to, if you go to Harrisburg, you're there to represent the people. And you want to bring, even though you vote against taxes and you vote against budget, that doesn't mean they don't have to pay for it. They're still taxed, even though they're House member or senator didn't vote for it. They still have to pay taxes. So you try to bring back to your district what you can. You try to vote for your district, and also you try to keep things normal as you can in Harrisburg. So You will find someone like me is altogether different than someone who's a Democrat in Philadelphia, or a Democrat in the heart of Pittsburgh, or a Democrat in Philadelphia or Erie County. Now the opposite is true too. A Republican who comes from Clearfield County, they don't have any problems. They just go with whatever the party says, and that's it. That's easy. So I was not that fortunate. I was not that fortunate. There were times when I thought maybe I should switch to the Republican Party, but I couldn't do it. I was a Democrat, and I always say I was a conservative Democrat. Now maybe I made the title up, but it suits me fine. But I really think I'm a conservative Democrat. And I look today, and I see votes today, and I think a lot of people have joined me in the party I started, the conservative Democrats, because it's you don't have the liberal spending that we did at the time. At the time, we don't have that. So, again, I apologize if I'm rambling.
No, that's okay. But coming from a Republican district, how did you decide to become a Democrat?
I believed in the Democratic ideals. I really did. And I think a good way to answer that question is Nixon did that. Nixon answered it for me. When he said that the vote to let business prosper. Let business prosper. And as business will prosper, it will, and his word was trickle down, or a trickle down theory, that if you let business prosper and make money, then it'll trickle down to the labor, and then labor will make money. And I think that's probably the difference in that's why I couldn't be a Republican. I don't see that trickle down. I think when business gets it, if there's not an obligation, they're going to keep it. So I could not really go that way. Now I'll tell you how I look at it. I always look at politics as a pendulum. A pendulum. If the Democrats are in power too long, the pendulum swings this way. That's not healthy. If the Republicans are in too long, it swings this way. That's equally not healthy. So I think the best way government can work is have that pendulum right in the center. If business isn't happy and labor's not happy, we got good legislation. And I think that's true of many legislations. If neither side is happy, that's a good piece of legislation. And I try to bring the pendulum into the center. I tried to bring it into the center. And I don't believe in that trickle-down theory that if business prospers, it's going to trickle. No, if business prospers, then their stockholders are going to be very, very thankful for that, and rightly so. And I'm not saying they should be. They should do what they should for their constituency. Labor should do what they should do for their constituency. And when either side gets out of line, it'll come back. That pendulum will come back to the center. So I probably could have been a Republican as well as a Democrat, but I think I favored the Democrats more than the Republicans. Another thing too, in answering that question, health and welfare were tough issues in that area. We had legislation that if someone was traveling, not legislation, we had laws. If someone was traveling through our state and they were welfare recipients of another state and they got into trouble, they'd go into our welfare office and get a check. You just can't hand money out like that. Also at the time, if there was a family, say a family of 5, when one of the teenagers became 18, he would go down and sign up for his own welfare case. So instead of the mother getting $65 a month for him, he was up to like $165 or $180 for his own welfare case. And all he did was have a birthday. You can't do that. You really can't do that. But on the same token, I was in a newspaper office up in Tarentum. And there was a plaque on the wall as I was waiting to be interviewed by one of the news media. There was a plaque on the wall. And they had it, as newspapers do, they'll take a headline or something and make it out of metal of some sort and put a plaque on their wall. And I read it. And there was a story about a family in Chicago that the mother was on welfare and there was no welfare of any, I shouldn't say that. She needed welfare, but there was no welfare at the time. And the story went on to read that she gassed her children, put her children in the oven and turned the gas on and killed them because she really could not afford that. I read that story. That story always remembered me. So when I voted for legislation, I had to say, I can't go too far here. What about this mother? Now, it wouldn't happen today. I'm talking that this was yesteryear. but it happened. So you have to keep in mind, you can't have the mother, these kids need food, so you can't be tough on welfare people, but on the same token, you can't be just giving money out because I became 18, so I get my own welfare, my own welfare case. So again, let's bring that pendulum back into the center. So that's, again, Democrat or Republican, middle of the road. Because even though my constituents were not welfare constituents, I could not go there and just arbitrarily vote against all welfare legislation. I couldn't do it. I did vote for some from welfare legislation that was what I thought was legitimate, because I just wouldn't go there and just cast away my my feelings and my morals. I couldn't do that. And the other issue too was it was a tough issue at the time, probably cost me votes and maybe even helped defeat me. The abortion issue, tough issue, and we faced it in the early 70s. We faced that head on. A gentleman from Philadelphia led the fight. Can't think of his name right now, but I'm sorry, I can't. But he led the fight. And
before it, Steve Friend, or is that later?
No, that was before.
Okay.
That was before him. Anyhow, that's a tough issue. That is a tough issue.
1 sec.
Yeah.
We gotta fix his mic.
Abortion issue.
Yep. Okay, the abortion issue, that was a big issue in the 70s, real big issue in the 70s. And that's a tough issue. I voted pro-life. I can see both sides, but there is no pendulum in that one. I mean, you were either this way or that way. There is no pendulum. And you can't hide on anything there. That's just a tough abortion. I mean, yeah, the abortion was a tough issue. Mm-hmm. And I was pro-life. At the time, I was Protestant, and people would criticize me. The only reason you're voting that is because your priest is telling you to. I said, well, it's amazing, because I'm Protestant and my minister, he's pro-choice. So I did. I voted pro-life, and I'll tell you why, because I'm a coward. I'm a coward. I don't know that did God give us a soul at conception, at 7 months after conception, at birth, 3 months after birth, or how about 7 years? When did God give us a soul? I don't know. And if someone could tell me, it would have made my life a lot easier. But I haven't found anyone who could tell me that. So I don't know when God gives us a soul. And I believe in God, and I believe that He does give us a soul, but I don't know when. Now, if we get a soul at conception, and I'm voting to kill that, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble if I go to heaven, and that certainly is debatable. But I'd be in trouble when I go to heaven. Although I'm going to talk to Him about the food chain too. I love animals, and I'm really concerned about the food chain. So God and I are going to have a discussion on that one too. But that's another issue for another day. But I don't know when we get a soul. So since I don't know, I was a coward, and I was going to vote on the safe side. And the safe side was to vote pro-life, which I did. Now, somebody listen to this and say, what an idiot we elected. That's my feelings. And that's, how's that song go? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. This day and age, the legislature really don't have that. They don't have that issue now. It's the courts have decided. And it was a big issue then because the courts had decided then, but the states were trying to, in Pennsylvania, one of them, trying to overturn the Constitution. And you had to pass it in so many states. So that's why we were faced with the issue. Didn't accomplish anything because we didn't change anything. But they were tough votes. And I'm sure that did cost me a great deal of votes. Yeah, very tough issue at the time. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk about the reasons why you decided to run initially for the House of Representatives. You said you ran against an incumbent once and lost,
yes,
and then once and won. So, why would you run against an incumbent, and what was that like?
He wouldn't retire. I had to. This is another story too. The incumbent I ran, his son and I went to high school together, and we were involved in high school at the same time. We were involved in politics in high school at the same time. And So I was familiar with the family. Great family. I'll mention a name. The name was Wilt. Great, and he became a senator too. But anyhow, I was a neighbor of the Wilts, and his father was a house member all the time. We went through high school, and I also campaigned for Mr. Wilt. And I knew I wanted to be a house member. That was my goal. And I didn't want to run against them because they were a lovely family. Just a nice. I could not say anything bad about them then. I didn't say anything bad in the campaign. I couldn't say anything bad about them now. They're nice people. But I felt it was my turn. I mean, he was there for 22 years, and that was the only way I could get there. I mean, and he had no sign of retiring. So I had to run there, either that or move, and I didn't want to do that. So I did run against him, and I guess it worked out well. He beat me. I did not beat him. It was only like 400 votes. But he did beat me, and in 400 or 4,000, he beat me, and I think it worked out well. His son at the time was running up in Mercer County, and he won, so it was good. So you had the father and the son were in his house together, which I thought was great, and I mean it worked. I'm happy today that I lost, so they could say they were together. So then the next 2 years, Mr. Wilt, the senior, he did not run for re-election. And I then won the seat. So the son, Roy, he and I served in the House together, and we were good friends. We were good friends the whole time. We were good friends. Then I went on to the Senate, and then Roy became a senator also a few years later. But nice family, beautiful family. So, but why did I run? I had to. I had to run against him. So that was the seat. That was the seat I was in, and running for re-election, yeah, fine. Then my career went on to, I had to make a decision. In fact, I did not know if I should run for the Senate or not. And I was taking on an incumbent who was a Senate pro temporary at the time, who was in Harrisburg for 36 years as a senator, and people saying, "Are you crazy? You're not going to beat him." His name was Senator Fleming. They said, "You can't beat him." I said, "Well, I don't know about that. I just don't know." But to hedge my bets, in 74, I ran, or in 73, the election was 73, we took office in 74. I ran for both House and Senate in the primary. And I said, I'll let the voters decide. If they want me to go to the Senate, vote for me. If you want me to go to the House, vote for me. I don't care. Well, they didn't cooperate. They elected me to both of them. So I says, oh, darn it, now I got to make a decision. So I had so many days to make a decision. Now, I didn't have to. I could run for both House and Senate all the way through. Now, you can't serve in two. You're not run back and forth in a hallway. You can't serve in two, but you can get elected in two. But I wasn't going to do that because I would just cost the taxpayers a great deal of money, because if I would have got elected in two, and I don't think I would have, they would have to have a special election. I'd have to give one or the other up. So I had to make a decision. And that was a tough decision. It was the last minute that I made the decision, should I run for the House and should I run for the Senate? And I decided that, even though people told me, "You can't beat him, are you crazy?" And not being the sharpest knife in the drawer, I said, I'm going to try it anyhow. So I did run for the Senate. And I gave up the nomination for the House and ran for the Senate. And probably the biggest mistake I ever made. Probably the biggest mistake I ever made. I thoroughly enjoyed the House. Even though I did have some tough times, I would say they treated me pretty good. Even though they didn't like my voting record, but they accepted the fact that that was my district. They accepted that. The senators never accepted it. I was hated before I even got there. I mean, and they would never accept the fact that I just come from a strong Republican area. And the Senate seat I had, that was even more Republican than the House seats. And they basically were waiting for me. They knew of me from my House career. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the Senate at all. I would have gone back to the House in a minute. But how do you say, I'm not going to run for the Senate, I'm going to run for the House? You say, well, that'll be our first time in history. But it's a smaller group. There's 50 of us. And when I got elected, we had the majority. We had 27 senators. Following year, we lost the majority. And I think maybe only one term since I left, which is in '86. I think only one term they got it back. And I may be wrong at that. They may not have ever gotten it back. But the Democrats in the Senate, all they were concerned about was Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And there were others like me who got elected in Republican areas. And one by one, we were eliminated. And I was eliminated in a Democratic primary. I wasn't a general election. They couldn't defeat me in a general election. The Democratic primaries, it was my own party that was after me, and they got me. They got me, but the seat now is Republican and will always be Republican, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the Senate is not fun in the position I was in. Now, if I was from Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, it would probably be a lot of fun because you have a lot of perks that you don't have in a House. But it wasn't fun to serve as a senator. No, that was a mistake on my part.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say from Pittsburgh, because we're obviously here in Pittsburgh today, and you serve from Allegheny County. So tell me a little bit about the district and why you wouldn't consider it Pittsburgh.
My district starts at the Pittsburgh line and goes north.
Okay.
I never had one constituent in Pittsburgh per se, but I'm in Allegheny County.
Right.
So, which was also difficult too. You know, when you do represent the county, but it's difficult. You know, your constituents, your county, your party, your state. You know, what do you do? Yeah. So what do you do? It was difficult, but I never had anything in the city of Pittsburgh. And then when I ran for my first re-election in the House, my punishment, because in the first re-election they had reapportionments. Well, they looked at my seat. I thought, damn, I can't even find it. You know? And they gave me, they took from me Bellevue, which was a strong Democratic area. They took Millville from me, strong Democratic area. Now, these are the Democrats that did this. These aren't Republicans. The Democrats reapportioned me. And they gave me areas of Ben Avon Heights, Kilbuck, Ohio. They even signed Republican. And they were solid Republican areas, which I didn't have a problem with. They thought they were punishing me, but they weren't. They were not punishing me. But that's, again, what happens if you don't vote party ways. You are punished. And in that same district, I don't know if you talked to Representative Marinick. Have you talked to him yet?
Not yet. No.
He ended up with the House seat after I did, and he was a real maverick. And he really, if they were mad at me, they were really mad at him. When they reapportioned him, they looked at his seat and it didn't exist. He had the 29th legislative district. They took part of it and put it in. They had like 5 House seats around him, and each seat around him took part of his district. And the only thing that was left of his district, I think they had a sidewalk that went from his district, which is North Hills, down to Beaver County, and had him run against a lady in Beaver County who was so strong in Beaver County. And he must, in Allegheny County, he probably had a grand total of 300 votes, because the line was just like a sidewalk going just straight shot down to Beaver County. So there was no district. And the 29th district ended up in Philadelphia. I assume, no, I guess it's still in Philadelphia, because they won't do that until the reapportionment, that they'll realign it. But they still have to have 203 House districts. So when they eliminate one, they have to put it somewhere. And the number was 29, so I'm sure 29 is still in Philadelphia, and will stay there until they reapportion it again. So he even had more of a reapportionment. That was more of a penalty than what I went through. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what were your constituents like? What were their issues?
My constituents were probably the best in the world. They really were. They were good. They looked at politics. Now, first of all, they're average. Not a great deal of money. Many union members, but union members who make a decent salary, live in the suburbs, have a mortgage, they have the station wagon. At the time it was station wagon. Now it's SUVs. All you know is SUVs. We know them as station wagons. They had the station wagons. They took the kids to the soccer. Take the kids to the soccer game. And the kids went to high school, and their ambition would go on to college. Just Joe average. And their attitude was pretty much, Senator, you do your job, we'll do ours. I tell you, I'm a mailman, I'm a truck driver, I'm an executive, and I have all I can do to worry about my kids and that. and we expect you to do your job. And they were really good people. I had something that was unique. Every Friday night, or every Friday I come home, I would go into one of the high schools. I had 13 high schools. And I'd go into one of the high schools, and I would tell them, I don't want it in an auditorium. I want a classroom. I don't care if you have them, stack them on the walls. I don't want an auditorium. I want a classroom. And I'd go in and I'd tell the kids, okay, I'm your politician. I'm not your teacher. Now you tell me what you've been saying about me behind my back. Now let's go. We had a ball. We had a ball. Those kids were great, especially in that era when it was the 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds allowed them to fight, and they're allowed to this and that, and they all wanted to drink. And I'm gonna tell you about that issue. This is a funny issue. I would let them say their piece. If we can go to the draft, we ought to be allowed to drink a draft. And if I can do this, I can do that. And if I can get married, and I say, well, don't do that. but they had all kinds, and I would let them expound and holler and do. I'd say, okay. So now, when it's 5 minutes to go into class, I'd say, okay, everyone take out a pencil and paper. Don't let anybody see what you're writing. Write on your paper. Now I would give my excuses. The kids that were killed in automobile accidents, and drinking, you'd end up in trouble, and it's this and that. And I'd give I'd hold my own, but I let them give their. I was fair. They gave their time, and I'd say, okay, take out a piece of paper. Now you write on that paper. Now I see only one thing. You have to be truthful. You can't lie. You be truthful. Be truthful with me. You put on that paper. Should I vote yes or should I vote no? To let teenagers drink. And no one can see what you're writing. Don't let anybody see it. So they write it. And I say, okay. Now I take the two who was most vocal. I'd say, okay. Now you two collect these. Collect the papers. Okay. Now you two count them. How many? Okay. What is it? And I never lost. I never lost. Even back in the 70s, I never lost. Those kids would vote no. Don't vote to permit 18-year-olds to drink. And they were shocked. They said, wait a minute. And I would make sure that those who were most vocal counted the votes. I just, well, don't look at me. You can't. I never lost that fight. So it's that same old thing, the peer pressure. Now, if I would say, okay, raise your hands, I would never won. But as long as it was secret, I never lost. And I give them all kinds of credit. I give them all the credit in the world. So that was every Friday. Now, we only discussed that once or maybe twice. And then we had other issues we'd discuss. And I let them, they'd carry the ball. And they'd give me heck, but everyone was in respect. They respected me. And every Friday, I was in one of the high schools. So there were 13. So I got into the high schools 2 or 3 times during a year. Then every Friday night, I'd go to the Northway Mall. That was our local mall. And I'd have a card table and 2 chairs and a sign that said Senator Early. And they knew that if they ever wanted to see me, because during the campaign, people would say, we want to see you politicians at election time. Now we won't see you again until the next election. And I remembered that, and I thought, that's not going to happen. So it was publicly known, if you want me, you'll find me at the Northway Mall every Friday night between 7 and 9. And if you want me, and the only people came who really needed me. Someone who needed their kids in a special school or something. They came with specific problems, but I never had people come just to holler at me. Except one time, they wanted to close a mental institution in my district, and it had to be closed. We had 7 mental institutions in Allegheny County, and they weren't for the patients; they were for the employees. It was for the employees, and we had to close them. We had too many in our state, and 7 in Allegheny County. We had to close them. So the governor, who was Thornburg at the time, came and told me we have to close one of the Dixmont Hospital. I said, Governor, you don't have a problem with me, which he thought he would. I said, no, you don't have a problem with me. Well, it ended up one Friday night, all the employees, I bet there were 70, 80 of them, they're screaming at me. About it, and I held my ground. And one funny story attached to that. The fellow who was a lobbyist, his first name was Ed. He was a lobbyist for the liquor stores, and I'll get into that issue. He was a lobbyist for the liquor stores. He saw that, and I always voted with him with the liquor stores, and he saw that. And he was a big guy, and he worked his way through the crowd, and I saw him coming. I thought, I hope he's not mad at me because he's too big. He came over to me and he said, Senator, you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate it. I thought, boy, thank you. I appreciate that. But it took a lot of guts on his part to come through that crowd who were screaming at me. Okay, I still have 3 sons. And one of my sons was misbehaving, and if I told him his punishment, he was grounded. He couldn't take the car. That's it. You're not allowed to take the car. And so I left for Harrisburg. Now, I got there about 9 o'clock, and I always call. Once I get there, I always call home and said to my wife, and how's things? And I was pretty tough on my son, and I was a little concerned about it. And I said, how's Todd? She said, I don't know. She said, you don't know? She said, he's not here. I said, he's not there. Did he take the car? She says, yes. I said, I told him he was grounded. Well, he's gone. I said, okay, now this is 9 o'clock at night after I just drove 3 hours from my district to Harrisburg. Now, only to find out he just totally defied me, not expecting to see me till Thursday. I said, okay. I went out and jumped in my car, and I'm headed right back to Pittsburgh. Now, it's late at night. I have to stop at every Howard Johnson's to sleep, so I don't want to end up in an accident. I got back to Pittsburgh probably about 6 o'clock. My wife was there waiting for me, and my son was he's in bed. Again, not expecting me till Thursday. I went up and I grabbed him right by the throat. Now maybe I'll have the child welfare people after me here, but I grabbed him by the throat. I dragged him down the steps, and I peed him pretty good. And I guess he was thinking, damn, is it Thursday already? So he got his just due. And maybe people would criticize me. You know, I didn't kill the kid. I didn't, there were no bones broken. But he knew he was in a house. He was in a tussle. And when it was over, he went back to bed. And I looked at my wife and I said, would you believe now I have to drive back to Harrisburg? And I drove back to Harrisburg. But and I'll do it again. I really think that and all 3 of them turned out great. Now, they're not perfect. I'm not saying I had perfect. 2 out of 3 got a college degree. And Todd, the youngest one, the one that decided he wasn't going to be grounded, he didn't go to college, but he's doing very well. All 3 of my kids are doing very well. And I do credit my ex-wife. I'm divorced, and that's because of politics. I credit my ex-wife for the kids turning out as good as they did, because I can't be in Harrisburg, and although I can drive back if they misbehave, and I do that again. I do that again, but I don't think I think that's a story that's probably unique. Well, I'll see you on Thursday or something. No, he wasn't going to see me Thursday. He was going to see me a lot sooner than he expected, and I believe I believe I did the right thing. I always tell people that if my kids if they ever put me in jail for beating my kids, I tell them when they let me out, leave this door open because I'm going to be right back. I think if parents would look at it that way, you probably, but not. I'm sure if someone sees this, they'll say that we ought to throw him in jail. Well, my boys they're grown. So yes. Yes.
So, but the political life had its strains, I'm sure, on your home life.
Oh, absolutely. You just can't. It's difficult. It really is. It's a tough life. You can't be away from home as much as that, and not have a proper home life. It's tough. It really is tough. It's a great sacrifice, a tremendous sacrifice, and the general public, they don't realize that. And how do you say that? They say, well, if you feel that way, don't run for the job. And they're right. I mean, we go into this knowing that it's a great sacrifice on our part. It's just a shame the public's not aware of it, or the newspapers or the TV stations aren't aware of it. It's a tough life, and it's tough for a home life. But I give my ex-wife all the credit in the world. She did see to it that the 3 boys turned out, is great an unfair word. You just say your kids are great. They're pretty good. How's that? I don't want to be an egotist. They're pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that anything surprised you whenever you first came to Harrisburg as an elected member of the General Assembly?
Yeah, the thing that surprised me the most was the difficulty. Boy, that is tough. You have to be an expert on so many subjects, and that is tough. You know, I said, your first year there, you have trouble finding the men's room, and then you have to know all of this. That is really tough to do. In fact, many legislation, I would study it, I would get opinions, I'd talk about it on my radio program, and then I'd pray. You know, now am I doing, you know, out of yes or no? It's tough, and you know, the way I looked at it, people didn't send me to Harrisburg because I was good looking, because that's not the case. They didn't send me there because I was the smartest one in the district, because that too isn't the case. I was elected because I got more votes than someone else who was willing to do it. And he probably wasn't the brightest person in the world either. So there's no prerequisite to this. So I went there with the idea that they're sending me there to do what they want me to do. And I really looked at it that I try to do the best job I can. And to do the best job you can, you better study that legislation and what you're saying, you know, the question you asked, that's difficult. You know, you study it and you try to get professional opinions and then you pray. Because that's difficult. That is really difficult. Because one day you're dealing with taxes, next day is budgets, the next day is abortion, and then highway safety, seatbelts. And then you have the insurance companies are fighting the attorneys, and the doctors are fighting the chiropractors. You get all these fights going on, and then you're in the middle of it. The thing that surprised me is how difficult the job was. It is a difficult job, and those who are there today, I give them a lot of credit. I do. And I will say this: being there in the 70s and the 80s, and comparing that, you know, if you want a comparison, your legislators today are head and shoulders above us, and we weren't bad, but they're head and shoulders above us. They are good. Your legislators today are good, and the news media just beats the heck out of them. That pay raise was just probably the most unfair issue that I've ever seen. They talk about they got, what, a $10,000 increase or $9,000, whatever the increase was. If you divide that by 260,000 constituents, it comes to $4 or 4 cents a constituent. So if anybody wrote a letter to complain about the pay raise, they just spent 29 cents for a stamp on an issue that was going to cost them 4 cents. That's not fair. You know, if the news media thinks the $10,000 is unfair, fine, say it. But also say it cost every one of you 4 cents. Now the people will say, 4 cents. My veterinarian complained about it. And now it didn't affect me. I'm not involved with it. And she complained about it. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. You know, I'm not going to walk out of this office less than $100. And you're complaining about you don't want to pay 4 cents to your House member or your senator? And she, what are you talking about for? And I explained to her that of a senator, it cost her additional 4 cents. Now a House member, it costs them additional 16 because they have 1/4 the amount of constituents. So they were up to a grand total of 16 cents. So let's tell the whole truth. Yeah, that's my opinion. And they can't check on that. Even the Channel 4 last week, they were complaining about the seniors, the Act 1 that lets the school districts go to an income tax instead of a property tax. And he's leading into it. And what does he lead into but those legislators who voted for this pay raise at the middle of the night? What the heck does that have to do with? And then he went into the issue of the property tax. Yeah, so, you know, forget, now they say they pass it in the middle of the night. You're sitting in Harrisburg. Have you ever seen them in session that the news media wasn't sitting there even in the middle of the night? So what's the difference if they pass it 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon? The news media is sitting there. They're going to report it. You know, it's not like, well, let's wait till they leave and then we'll do it. That's not the case. They don't leave. They sit there. So what's the difference if they pass it 2 in the morning? Again, they don't say that. So what I'm getting to, I'm basically indicating to you that the House members and senators today, they're the champs. They deserve every penny they get. They really do. They deserve every penny. And I'd like to talk about that legislation that they had. And I made a career of trying to do away with property tax and let the school districts go to an income tax. I mean, I made a career of that. Every 2 years I'd introduce that legislation. To me, it's the best legislation in the world. They voted it. It went to the constituency, and they voted it down. I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? And I think they made a mistake. The idea behind it, and nobody got it across. The idea behind it is, let the school board, don't dictate, let the school board decide. Do they want to generate money for their budget through income tax or property tax? Their decision. But the legislature has to vote to give them that decision. And they did. That was after I left. But the news media did not bring that out. Now, the idea is, and even the senior citizens voted against it. It bewilders me. The only thing is they didn't know what they were doing. My idea is, and always has been and always will be, you should pay your taxes according to your ability to pay. Now, a senior citizen who retires, he has a property tax of $4,000 or $5,000, he's in trouble. And some of them have to sell their house, which is unfair. So my idea is, let's let everybody pay according to their ability to pay. And what is a better indication of your ability to pay than your income? And I've always said, not just a wage tax. You know, wage tax, that only taxes those who work. There are some very rich people who cut coupons, make a great deal of money, and if you don't have an income tax, they escape it. Now, if you let someone escape it here, someone else has to pick up the load. School boards, there is no limit to their taxes. There's no limit to their budget. Where counties, cities, boroughs, there's a limit to their taxes, not school boards. So people confuse that. They say, we want reform. We want the budget to go down. This legislation had nothing to do with the school board's budget. All it was saying is, let the tax be paid by the people who can afford it. And if you're rich, small, if you're rich or poor, you pay according to your ability. To me, I thought every school district around would vote for that, and one or two voted for it, which to me, they were lying to me at the time, because my constituents were telling me they wanted it. Somebody lied to me, and I still say that legislation was the best legislation that you could, and I'd go to my grave saying they made a mistake. And I don't think, in all fairness, I don't think anyone got it across. You know, how can you argue that everyone pays according to their ability to pay? And then you'd get a household where, say, the wife brings in $85,000, the husband brings in $105,000. They're probably going to pay more under the income tax, but they're going to retire. They're not always going to make $85,000 and $95,000. So when they retire, okay, they will pay according to their ability to pay. So I was shocked at that, and I give the legislators credit. They voted it. No one can complain about them. They voted it. The people voted it down. Which bewilders the heck out of me. Yeah, I'm shocked.
Well, I'd like to backtrack just a second. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about how I think we talked a little bit about what surprised you the most, but I wanted to ask you about your first swearing-in ceremony after that hard election.
Disappointing.
Oh.
Disappointing. It was a shame. It was a shame. Again, when you're a freshman, I wanted to take my wife, my three sons, my mother and my dad, and I wanted to take them to the ceremony. Unfortunately, those who in leadership, they take care of all those who are reelected. You know, have been around their buddies and that. And I didn't know anybody, and I was given just a small allotment, and it was very, very, very disappointing. Yeah, it was extremely disappointing. I was, my father and one of my sons had to sit up in the balcony and they couldn't participate. That was disappointing, and that's unfair. Yeah, they should. Then I noticed only later. You know, I didn't know what was going on, but I noticed later as those who were incumbents and they were there, they had plenty of seats, and their relatives and that were taken care of. Mm-hmm. That was disappointing. It was for the first time. It was disappointing. Yeah, yeah, that was, but that's, I'm a big boy.
Did you have any mentors whenever you first came? Someone that would show you the ropes and...
Nobody. Oh, it was nobody, especially when one of my first votes was the income tax. And no, I had nobody. Really had nobody. I like to say I did. I had a few talks with Kay Lieber-Irvis, who was the majority leader at the time. Herb Feynman was speaker, and Kay Lieber-Irvis was majority leader. And I like to say that I had a few discussions with him, but I can't say a mentor of any kind. No, no, I didn't have that. That was tough. It was tough. It was a tough thing. Yeah.
Who did you sit beside on the House floor? Do you remember?
Yes, I did. A fellow by the name of Walsh was on my left side. He was from McKeesport and there for quite a few years. And on my right side was Helen. Forget her name now. She was from Natrona Heights, since deceased. I'm disappointed I didn't remember her name. Yeah, but the Speedo was two seats in front of me. I know that. I know where Speedo was because I kept my eye on him.
Could you describe your first office whenever you came to Harrisburg?
Oh yeah, I couldn't find it. We were up in the attic, and and I was amazed that the state was going around closing offices because they weren't safe to be in. We were in the attic. If there was a fire, Pennsylvania would have lost 25% of the House members. We were upstairs and just a battery of desks, and you shared your secretary with two others, maybe even three. I know two others. You had to share your secretary with two others, and it was always a fight. Oh, get my work done. I can't. I got to. So that was always a fight. That was yeah. Well, there was no office. Now those House members get these beautiful through the addition. They get these beautiful offices. No, we didn't have. We had a chair. We had a desk, a chair for a constituent who, if they found their way, and a file cabinet. And a wastebasket, and that was it. I mean, and one file cabinet. That was the extent of it. That's all we got.
Well, who was in your office? Do you remember who was there with you?
Well, no, there were probably House members. There were probably 12 or 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, there were quite a few of them. Yeah, yeah, there were quite a few of them. Yeah, one fellow I remember, Sam something from around the Philadelphia area. We were talking, and our desks faced each other. We faced each other. And he was telling me he was going to introduce legislation that people on welfare should come and cut his grass. I said, what? He said, yeah. If they get money, they should cut. I said, you mind if I don't co-sign that legislation? Yeah, that was... I don't know if he ever introduced it, but he told me he was going to. I didn't think that would fly. But Sam, well, I can't think. Yeah, we are talking many years now. We're going back to 71, 72. That's a long time ago. Yeah, so, no, I don't remember who else was in. I remember faces. Tom Fee was one real nice guy. Real nice guy. Tom Fee from Butler County. Real nice guy. His wife used to come up a lot. She'd come up a lot. And nice lady. Very, very, very nice lady. Nice people. Nice people. They were, and then we had I was in there with a lot of the Philadelphia people. And the amazing part of it, even though I'd vote against Philadelphia, a lot of the Philadelphia, especially the black members, we got along pretty good. We really did. We got along pretty good. In fact, I'd have to say I went out to dinner probably with more of the black members than I did anyone else. And you think of all things, you'd think they want to be the 6 Speedo on me. That wasn't the case. No, I got along with them pretty good, and they were in they were in that complex.
Did you ever have a district office as a House member?
Oh, a House member? Yeah, but I paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I paid for it.
I wasn't sure since you had your table at the mall.
Yeah, no, I did have, and I paid for that myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what was your relationship like whenever you moved from House to Senate? What different people have said, it's the upper chamber, and those types of comments. And what do you think?
I think they're the biggest egomaniacs that ever existed. I did not like the Senate. As I said at the beginning of the interview, I did not like the Senate. The House members they were younger. First of all, they were younger. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the money that goes with the Senate seat, and they certainly didn't have the egos. That wasn't the case. They didn't have the egos. No, I like the House members. No, senators. No, it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the major differences were between the chambers?
Between the two chambers?
Just the staff and.
Well, let's depart from the personal. Let's forget the personal. Let's just take the two chambers. There certainly is more to be accomplished. Bigger districts, 4 times as big. More responsibility, because you're voting the same as 4 people in the House. So a great deal more responsibility. Now let me take it back. When I talk about the senators, let me take it back to one. I watched that television channel that what's a PNC?
PCN.
PCN. I watched that, and I was observing Armstrong. What's his first name?
Gibson.
Gibson. What's it? Gibson Armstrong, or he's the guy that has two last names or
Yes.
2 first names,
I think he goes
and I don't
by
know which is which.
Senator Gib Armstrong.
Gibson Armstrong. I was observing him. I was really impressed. Now, when I left, he was coming. I served maybe 1 term under him, or not under him, with him. And if all the senators today are like Gibson Armstrong, yeah, I'm impressed. He really, really handles himself well as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, which is the #1 committee. I mean, that's the money. And I was disappointed when the program was over. He really, really did a nice job. So when I'm talking about the difference between the House and the Senate, I want understanding. I'm not talking about present-day senators. I'm talking about, and I'm talking about senators then. And I'd have to believe that the most senators are probably the same as Gibson Armstrong. I'd have to, I have no reason not to. And if that's the case, and I'm going to say that is the case. Yeah, they do a nice job. He doesn't. They do. He does. He really did a nice job. I mean, he told about the taxes that are coming, who's going to pay for it, and this is the budget, and you have to make decisions. And he told it just like it. And he was also truthful. He said, and now I have a constituency of my own. And my constituents aren't interested in the transit problems of Allegheny County or the transit problems of Philadelphia. But he didn't come off that he was only going to be concerned about Lancaster County. He came off that he was concerned about the whole state, but he also let it be known he's concerned about Lancaster County. So I'm probably being unfair to the senators of present day. So if anyone's present senators are watching this, I'm not speaking of you. I'm speaking of those son of a guns who didn't like me. And the House members, I'm impressed with them. Watching them as I do, on PCN, yeah, and reading, but the votes, yeah. I'm impressed. They do a nice job.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you about your legislation now, and what pieces of legislation were you involved in, and what are you particularly proud of throughout your career? You can talk about House and Senate at this point.
Well, in the House, there was no legislation for me. I mean, I could introduce all I wanted, but nothing was going to pass. First of all, when the first 2 years, the Democrats controlled, and they weren't going to give me anything. And the second 2 years, the Republicans controlled, and they equally were not going to give me anything, so I wasn't going to get any legislation passed there. In the Senate, as I said, I spent a career trying to pass the legislation on school taxes and never got it passed. But I also voted and worked hard, really worked hard on seatbelt legislation. Boy, did I work hard on that. I had meetings with doctors, hospitals, any place, and any news, I traveled around the state talking about it. Any talk show that wanted to talk to me, I would talk about seatbelts and how many lives would be saved. And I again made a career of trying to get the seatbelt legislation passed. Governor Thornburg appointed a commission to study the seatbelts, and he wasn't going to put me on the committee, but I think he felt that, hey, one thing you have to put early on there, because I really I worked too hard at it, and it was publicly known that was my legislation. So he did put me on a commission, and we studied it. We studied it hard, and I introduced the legislation. I did get main sponsorship, and it passed in the Senate. I got it through the Senate. It went on to the House, and through no fault of mine, some conservative right-winger decided he was going to champion my legislation. That was probably my fault. I should have appointed somebody, say, hey, take this through. Well, he was really so far to the right, I don't think his car would make a left turn. and went over there. Because of him, even my black friends, including Leroy Irvis, voted against it, and it didn't pass. And I was extremely disappointed. That would have been my legislation, seatbelts in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. It didn't pass that session. I got defeated, and then eventually the next session it passed. So I can't take credit for that. But nobody worked. I don't whoever ended up credit for it. I laid the groundwork. I did the work. Mm-hmm. And I was only disappointed that it didn't pass. I was disappointed because I didn't say I was a sponsor. But also I was disappointed because people died because of that. If that legislation would have passed that night and people would have had seatbelts, more people would have been saved. Mm-hmm. So I resent those House members doing what they did and delaying that vote until the next session, because I naturally don't know how many people died because of it. But people did die because not passing that legislation, which was a shame.
Well, are you happy with it being a secondary violation, or do you think it should be a
No,
primary
I was
violation?
and that was also in my legislation, and that was an insistence on Thornburg. Mm-hmm. Thornburg insisted on that. No, and I don't understand that. I to this day I don't understand it. Someone has to explain that to me, that and what it is for those who are watching this, if anybody's watching. What that is you have to be speeding or go through a red light or go through a stop sign, and then if you do that, then they can give you a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. That's dumb. Seatbelts should be mandatory regardless, and if you don't wear your seatbelt, you should get a ticket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, was that one state that? I think it's Pennsylvania. Click it or ticket.
Yep, that's the
There's
state.
one I had when I was in Vancouver. There was a billboard, and I thought, oh, it's beautiful. It wasn't seatbelts, but I would digress for just a second. It was drinking and driving. And it says, you can drink and you can drive. Pick one. I think that's clever. I think that was really catchy. Mm-hmm. Pick one. So I didn't mean to diverse, but yeah. Okay.
Well, is there any other legislation or issues you would like to talk about at this time?
Nothing nothing that I would say to the present House members. You ought to do this. You ought to do that.
Okay.
No, I think they're doing.
Okay.
I can't see that. I think Pennsylvania, through guys like Gibson Armstrong. I want to say Armstrong Gibson. Yeah. Through Gibson Armstrong. I think Pennsylvania. Now I live in Florida half my life, and I live in Pennsylvania half my. I'm a snowbird, so I see Florida. I compare the two states, and Pennsylvania. Even though we're losing constituents, and Pennsylvania's having problems, I still think they're doing a nice job. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think the governor Rendell. I can't take issues with him. Can't say I agree with everything, but a Democrat out of Philadelphia. Come on, people say, elect him governor. Yeah, we've done that. But I can't. If you'd asked me to come up with an issue that I disagree, or could give you an issue that I think they should undertake, I couldn't do it. No, they're doing fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were on several committees during your House tenure. Do you think you had a favorite committee? I see public health and welfare, aging and youth, finance, appropriations, education, military and veterans affairs.
Boy, did I do all that?
Yeah, yeah, you did.
I would, naturally, the finance committee, because that's the one that generates the cash. And I had interest there, you know, income tax and so forth. Yeah, I had interest there. I was chairman of the Veterans Affairs, and I was disappointed. I didn't do a good job. I was disappointed in myself. I didn't have a very long, wasn't a veteran, but I respect them. I do respect veterans. I respect, and the short time that I had that, I did not do a good job. I should be criticized for it. I had Westmoreland, who was one of my constituents, and I didn't know it. I should have had him come to Harrisburg. I really should. I didn't know it. I didn't know it, and I criticized myself for not knowing it. When I was a little kid, during World War II, on the north side, there was a fellow by the name of Commando Kelly, a hero in World War II, and there was a big parade for Commando Kelly. And I went from 5U, which is, you're not familiar with that, but 5U was quite a distance for a young kid to walk. I'm like 8, 9 years old, and I walked down the north side because I went to see Commando. They had a big parade for Commando Kelly when he came back from the war. And he was still alive when there, and I should have had Commando Kelly come to Harrisburg. He deserved it, and you know, and to talk with the committee that I was the chairman. And disappointed with that. I didn't do that. I wasn't, and it wasn't out of laziness. It was probably out of stupidity. I should have done more. The short time I had it, and I only had it for a short time, but the short time I had it, I should have done more. It's a disappointment on my part. The veterans deserve better.
You know? But you probably didn't realize that you're going to move to the Senate either.
No, I'm talking about in the Senate.
Oh, in the Senate. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about in the Senate. Yeah. That was a disappointment. I should have done better. Health and welfare, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. Well, I have to tell you a funny story, very brief. This was when I was a House member. Now, there's nothing worse than a freshman House member. I mean, we're pretty egotistical. We're pretty bad. So the chairman indicated that we were going to go to Procter & Gamble and discuss with them phosphates they're putting in their detergents, because their phosphates are destroying our streams and so forth. So we were going to go to Procter & Gamble and discuss phosphates. And the plane was going to leave Harrisburg, and then it was going on to Pittsburgh, and then on to Cincinnati. And at Cincinnati, we were going to be met with limousines from Procter & Gamble. They were going to take us to the hotel. And then that night, they're taking us to their private dining room, and they're going to serve us dinner, and everything's going to be fine, and great. So I said, instead of me driving to Harrisburg to get a plane to come back to Pittsburgh, can I just get the plane in Pittsburgh? She said, yeah, that'll be fine. Now, this was all, it's 2 weeks ahead of time, where everything was planned. So I'm scheduled to get the plane in Pittsburgh. Well, unfortunately, for whatever reason, I missed the plane. So I thought, well, it's no problem. I'll get the next plane, and I'll get a cab, and I'll catch up with the committee. So I got the next plane, and when, as you know, in politics, you're recognized by your county. Early from Allegheny County, and Representative Early from Allegheny County, from Butler, everything's county. So I got off the plane. The guy says, "Are you from Allegheny?" I says, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I got the limousine for you." I thought, boy, that chairman is really great. She sent this limousine back and to pick me up. I said, man, this is fantastic. Yeah, so he's, give me your bags. We got the bags, and off we went. Put them in the limousine, and I'm sitting there like King Kong. And he says, "You're really doing a good job." I thought, I just had a good campaign, but I didn't know it was that good. I said, "Well, I'm trying." Now, keep in mind, an egotistical freshman House member, head this big. He says, "People around here really appreciate you." What the heck is he talking about? He said, "We never had airplane service like we have since you took over." He's talking about Allegheny Airlines. I'm in the middle of the airport in downtown Cincinnati. I can't tell this dude I'm not supposed to be there. And I'd be put out in the middle of nowhere. So we went to this hotel, which I wasn't supposed to be. So he and I were fighting over the suitcase. No, I got it. No, I got it. So finally I got my suitcase. I ran in the front door and out the back. Got a cab and went where I was supposed to be. And that poor fellow said, "Why did you pick so-and-so up?" He said, "I did pick him up."
Oh, no.
But that shows you how dumb we can be. So, Yeah, I like the Health and Welfare Committee. I did enjoy that. And I was never on the Transportation Committee, but I had a lot of legislation dealing with highway safety. Mm-hmm. I thought there was a need there, and I enjoyed highway safety issues. The seatbelts, and it was big on my part. Yeah, okay. But all those committees, I enjoyed most of them. I really did. I wish I would have done a better job, but you're too soon old and too late smart. Mm-hmm.
Well, what aspect of your job as a House member did you enjoy the most?
What did I enjoy the most? I can't say there was one thing. As a House member, you have constituent work. You're out with your constituents. You do legislative work. You do committee work. I have to say I enjoyed all of it. I really did. And it's if I was to pick one, I'd have to say constituent work. I'd have to say that. But going into the high schools, that was fun. I enjoyed that. Talking to my constituents at the mall and the radio program, I enjoyed it all. I really couldn't say. Now you're talking about House now. You're talking about House. The House. I enjoyed it all. Okay. I really did. That was fun.
Well, what did you not like about being a House member?
Traveling. Well, that was tough. I mean, and it was 3.5 to 4 hours. Yeah, that was tough. Being away from home. Yeah, I didn't like that. I really didn't. I had a nice family. I had a nice wife, and I had 3 nice kids. And it's tough to be away from them, but that's a sacrifice you make. And not just politicians, but many people make that sacrifice in their field of endeavor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like being away from them.
Did you ever have any bad weather?
Bad weather?
Bad weather travel.
Oh, I go through going through Somerset in the middle of winter. Oh yeah. Except that I would say this: the Turnpike Commission, they did a nice job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were times. Yeah, there were times when it was difficult to get through. Mm-hmm. I don't recall any that I did not make it.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever travel with anybody, or do you travel solo?
Yeah, Senator Fleming and I. When I was a senator, when I was a House member, he was a senator, and he was shrewd. He was an old-time shrewd politician. He was an Irish politician from the best. I mean, he was the best. So when I got elected to the House, he was the senator, and he befriended me. I didn't befriend him. He did befriend me, and we became pretty good friends. And we used to drive back and forth. You probably knew that, did you? You didn't know that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to pick him. Being much younger than him, I used to drive him back. We'd drive back and forth, and he's a guy that I ran against. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was tough. I did not want to run against a guy. I'll tell you right now, I did not. I liked the guy. I liked him personally. Maybe both coming from Irish backgrounds and both being Irish politicians. There's nothing worse than Irish politicians. I mean, yeah, we're pretty bad. I liked them. But I knew that I wanted to be the senator. And he didn't have any ambitions of retiring. And I said to him, now you had an interview with Representative Sesser, who had the adjacent district to mine, and he was also part of the 40th senatorial district. And he was a longtime Republican. He was a staff member for
Lee Donaldson.
Lee Donaldson. So he was a staff member for Lee Donaldson before he became a House member. So he knew his way around, and he naturally knew Senator Fleming. And And I said to Senator Fleming, I said, Senator Fleming, there's no doubt that it looks like Rick Sesser and I are going to be running against each other for the Senate. Where would you be in a race like that? And he lied. He says, I'd have to stay neutral. I knew that was a lie. I knew that was a lie. He wasn't going to stay neutral. If he would have said to me, well, I have to be with Sesser, I would have respected that more. But he knew Rick Sesser because Rick Sesser worked for Lee Donaldson. Rick Sesser was a House member, the same as me, all Republican, and I knew he was lying to me. And on the way up to Harrisburg, the last time I drove him, because he didn't drive with me after that, on the way up I said, Senator, I have to tell you, I'm contemplating running for the Senate. And but I also ran for the House at the same time. As I indicated, I said, I'm running for both. And then we'll decide later what's going to happen. Well, he no longer rode with me back and forth. But Yeah, did I ride with some? Yeah, I chauffeured him. In fact, he was the old school that he didn't smoke, but he did chew tobacco. And the side of my car, I'd have to take it in for a tobacco change every 6 months when he was spitting out the side door. He was a nice guy. I didn't want to run against him, but he forced me into it. Plus the fact, too, I couldn't run the risk of someone beating him, and then I never get the seat. Yeah. So, I mean, that was my thinking at the time. So, yeah, I did travel. I thought maybe you knew that. That's why you asked the question.
No, I didn't.
That was unique.
Yeah. Well, you've talked a little bit about your Senate career as well. So what aspect do you think you enjoyed the most of being a senator? Oh, I'm sorry. What did I enjoy the most? No, I as a House, I enjoyed it all, as I indicated to you. I liked the constituents, the work, and the committees. I liked it all. The Senate, it was just too tough. I mean, they beat me up. They didn't have Speedo didn't go with me. They didn't have him, but they beat me up verbally. Yeah, it was tough. It was, it's tough to be in a group of 27 and knowing that they dislike you. Yeah, no, it was tough. I didn't enjoy the Senate. I can't say anything that. No, I can't say anything. I didn't like it. Okay. I'm sorry.
You're gonna have a pity party for me.
I feel bad. Well, since you were in Harrisburg for many years, did you notice any changes to the General Assembly? And this could be House and Senate. And it could be structural or events, anything that changed during your tenure. It could be different people talk about modernization during your time that you'd served.
They did some real nice construction after I left. Maybe they were waiting for me to leave. No, they did a nice job. I've been back, as you know, I've been back there. And I have to compliment the House. The Senate doesn't do this. The Senate doesn't invite us back as the House does. And I give credit to your leadership. This is only because your leadership is permitting this to happen. I give them credit. This I think is really great. But the Senate there's nothing like this in the Senate. They modernized it after I left. But if I would have to say, if you really want to know the difference between when I was there and when I left, the caliber of the people, it's amazing. Now, I don't see them that often. I see them on TV. But I'm going to even go one step further. The staff. Mm-hmm. The staff. And the staff, I've spoken to you in the past, and I'm impressed. In the past, they were political hacks. Who, if you got someone, hey, I need 3 jobs. Well, okay, we'll put them here, we'll put them there. That day's gone. I'm impressed with you. I'm impressed with the other staff members that I've been in contact with since I went back. And I'm impressed with the House members and the senators. I just can't get over the improvement. And I will say this too, I was told that the improvement from 10 years before I got there. There's a story they tell. There was a senator who went on vacation while he should be in session. And he'd call back every day to find out what's going on. And his hometown newspaper wrote it up that Senator so-and-so was so concerned about his constituents that even while on vacation, he called every day to find out what's going on. Now, you couldn't get away with that when I was there. Nothing. So I see a general progression of improvement in staff and elected officials since I left. There was a story, and I just found out just this week, when I was in the Senate, they told about a senator who had a quarry, and the specifications for the state, especially those cobblestones that you see all over Pittsburgh, the specifications that the state wrote, only his quarry was up to specifications. So they had to buy it from him. And he just, whatever it was. So I never knew who the senator was. This week, a friend of mine who does volunteer work for what they call the Lawrence Estate. It's an estate that was given to Allegheny County when Mrs. Lawrence died. And they use it, the county uses it for light up nights, and they use it to generate money for what they call bundle up, for coats for people, poor people. So the county uses it for But when I was touring, when I was going through there, the person was telling me, oh, this is the Lawrence estate. Her father was Senator Flynn. And Senator Flynn had this quarry down in Ligonier. And I said, that's the guy. So you can never get away with now the Lawrence, Mrs. Lawrence, she was the daughter of Senator Flynn. And he just had so much money, he'd give his kids just everything, and he built her this fabulous mansion that's still in existence out in the northern part of Allegheny County. Mm-hmm. But that was just, she was just the daughter, and that was given to her. Mm-hmm. Now, can you imagine this day and age about someone having a quarry, and the state had to buy whatever, they had to buy the stone or whatever from that particular quarry. So things have changed from there to now. Mm-hmm. And it's been a progression that I've seen. I can compare with stories of previous to me, and I can compare it with what I was there and compare it with what I see now. And in our day, they say you couldn't buy politicians, but you could rent them for a while. That's not true today. When we've talked about the indictment of the month club. Yeah, there were 5 or 6 House members and senators in the 70s that were indicted for taking cash for various reasons. And we didn't know on Monday who was going to show up and who wasn't. And but that was even worse. That was even worse previously. And I have learned, since I left the Senate, I have learned that previous to that, the Pennsylvania Railroad controlled the state legislature. Did you know that? Have you ever heard that? Have you? I didn't know that until recently. I had found out that the Pennsylvania Railroad actually controlled the state legislature, House and Senate. So you heard it too, huh? Yeah. So, when you get a railroad controls it, they control it. The people didn't have much of a say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can going from the railroads to the senator with his quarry and the indictments of the 70s, and today, well, we did have that hay bay that I don't think he was much of a thief as he was stupid. I mean, that is just dumb. That was when I read that article, I said, he didn't make anything. He didn't make any money out of it. He didn't get any money in his pocket. That was just dumb. And he was the shining light. They had big plans for him. Judging from what I read, they had big plans for him. Yeah, I feel bad. I really truly feel bad that something that had happened to him. I don't know him personally. I just know from his conviction. That's all I know. But I feel bad for him. But I mean that's one. That's the first one in how many? You have 203 House members and 50 senators. Mm-hmm. I've always said that you 203 House members and 50 senators. I'm a Catholic now, so I can say this. You get more priests in trouble than you do House members and senators. so the newspaper is on you. My father owned a building here in Pittsburgh, and in the building there was a state store. I got a call from the Post-Gazette that they had a real scoop. Do you own this building on Boulevard of the Allies in Pittsburgh? No. Well, he said, I got the records indicate you own it. I said, no. I said, that's my father. We both have the same name. I'm Junior. And he said, oh, he owns the building, yeah? He said, well, why is it he has the state liquor store is in his building, renting from him? I said, because when he bought the building, the liquor store was there. And when the lease is up, the liquor store is going to be gone. So the newspaper, they divulge into that. So you don't get away with it. If someone gets away with something today, God bless them, because they're really smart. You don't get away with it, and rightly so. I'm not advocating that people should. I'm just saying that the House members and senators this day and age, they're honest, they're hardworking, and they're intelligent too. They really, I seen them speak just like when Gibbs Armstrong. He can really speak, and he mentioned about his background as a Marine. He could handle Speedo. but his background, I was impressed with that, and I'm sure the fact that he was chairman of the committee, he got to expound that others did not, and I'm sure that there are others there who, in the House, I'm sure the House members are, you have to have some credentials. Most of them are college graduates, and impressed.
Well, what would you say your fondest memory is of serving in the House?
Fondest memory. Serving in what's fondest memory? I can't. Just the aura, just the aura of the procedure. Not sitting in a chamber that I sat in, which you see almost every day. Sitting in a chamber of that aura, knowing the history of it, the individuals who sat in those seats, the individuals who did what what I was doing, just the aura of the procedure, knowing what I'm doing, knowing that I'm representing at the time 230,000 constituents back home. The whole thing, the whole thing. What I'm doing, and I looked at it with great reverence and great respect, a great deal of respect for the procedure. Naturally, there were some I disliked. Herb Feynman didn't like me. I didn't like him. But you indicated you're going to interview Ken Lee, or you already did.
Mm-hmm.
You already did.
Mm-hmm.
How can you not respect a guy like that? How can you? And knowing that you're sitting there in the same chamber. Even though at the time he was the first 2 years he was he was minority chairman, and then the second 2 years he was the speaker. But how could you not respect? To think that we're both, even though he had the titles there, I'm still a House member as he's a House member. Yeah, and how can you not respect and be enthralled by the fact that you're working with people of his caliber? Yeah, that's so. I can't say anyone. You asked for memory. I can't say any memory, but I do remember that. I remember the procedure. I remember the procedure. I remember people like him, and I remember Leroy Irvis, extremely dedicated. I remember individuals, but the aura of what we're doing. We are lawmakers. We are representing people of one of the greatest states of our nation, and that's a title you have, and that's a responsibility you have. So the aura of it all, that's my memory. That's really my memory.
Well, what have you been up to since you left the Senate?
It's a fair question. I was 51 years old when I was defeated, and I tell people I was defeated because of illness. My constituents got sick of me. What have I been doing? I've been retired. I retired. It was 51 when I retired, and I do own a nice condo on the Atlantic Ocean, and I do spend I spend as much time as I can there. But I have a 94-year-old mother still alive, and a real pain in the neck. I tell her, can't you get just a little bit senile and give me a break? Because she's sharp as a tack. She really is sharp as a tack. And we have real estate, as I indicated. My father and my mother did acquire some real estate, of which I have a brother and a sister. And so I'm involved in that as an absentee. So I can't divorce myself from Pittsburgh. But I'm basically retired. And I've traveled. I've been to China. I've been to Russia. Puerto Rico, Cuba. I'm not allowed to go, but I want to go. I want to sneak in again. Americans are not allowed to go there, but I went there under Batista when I was a kid. I went there under Batista, and I went there under Castro, and I want to go back under Castro. And then I want to go back when they finally throw him out, or he died. They're going to throw him out. He's going to die. But so I've traveled a lot. To answer your question, what have I done? I've traveled. Mm-hmm. I've been an absentee landlord with real estate. I'm just absentee. I spend a lot of time on the ocean in Florida. I walk. I'm an avid walker. I try to keep my health as best I can. I am 71, and I want to keep myself in as good a shape as I can. Try to make it to 72, mm-hmm. And it's been a good life. It's been a good life. Had an unfortunate situation. My dog died 2 weeks ago, and I'm still bummed out about it. That's tough. That's tough. She was 19. The doctor said, my vet said, how long do you think you're going to keep? I said, I want to keep another 19. It's tough. So I've been, and traveling, I do, since I've been retired, I've been traveling, and I take my dog everywhere. I mean, she's had a good life. She sat on the balcony of watching the Atlantic Ocean, so she had a good life. But traveling back and forth with her, and I traveled extensively. So I've had a good life. I really have. I was an avid basketball player up until I was 62, and then I came to the conclusion the NBA was not going to pick me up and draft me, so I better quit this. My knee was going bad, so I thought it's not worth an operation. So I stopped playing. But I went to in fact I played basketball every day. I'd get up and I'd be back in the basketball court at the YMCA right across the river, and I'd be there, and 11:30 I'd be on the court, and we'd have. They were tough games. I mean, I was the oldest one there, but that didn't mean anything to them. You played, and then when your team lost, you had to sit down, and then the next one came up. So you probably were involved in that type of basketball. So if you lose, you have to sit down. Well, no one wants to sit down. So that was pretty tough. Anyhow, that was my procedure. And then after basketball, we'd go and have a Coke or something. Then I'd go home and have dinner with my wife. And one day I went home to have dinner with my wife, and she wasn't there. And so I had dinner and got late. So I figured that she was babysitting one of my sons, and she would do that. She'd babysit one of the kids and then not come home. And if they were late, she'd just stay there instead of driving home late at night. So she didn't come home, so I got it next day, went out and played basketball. And came home that night, and again, she's not there. And I thought, well, that's strange. So about 9 o'clock, I called my son. I says, "Did your mother leave me?" He said, "Yeah, 2 days ago." So I said, "Oh, okay." So he was an attorney. I said, "Well, you're an attorney. You have to be my attorney during a divorce." And he said, "I can't be your attorney." I said, "Why not?" I said, "You love your mother and you love your dad. You're perfect. There's no one better than you." So he did, and it worked out well. Yeah, I got a divorce, and wasn't expecting it, but I mean, it happens moving west. So it was a shame. It was a shame, but it's a shame it happened. But that's what I've been doing, getting divorced. And I always kid people and say, they say, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I drink beer, I phone a woman, and I get the weekends off." None of which is true. So it's been a good life for me. I exercise, I travel, and
Are you still active in politics?
not a bit. I didn't even vote the last time. No.
Oh my goodness.
No. I tell you what it is. You all went to high school. You all went to college. You liked it. You enjoyed it. You wouldn't give it up. But you don't want to go back.
No. Okay.
You wouldn't go back to college. You enjoyed Point Park, Indiana, and Duquesne. You enjoyed it all. Politics is the same way. That's the way I look at it. I'm glad I did it. I enjoyed it. I'm glad it's over.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to go back, no.
Well, how would you like to be remembered as far as your tenure in the House goes?
I have nothing that I can't, I didn't get the seatbelt bill through. I didn't get that through. I didn't get the property tax through. I didn't do anything. I didn't get anything through that I really, really wanted to do. So maybe I should return my pay to my constituents, but I can't find them. The other thing I was to remember is people, even today, people remember me. And I've been out of office since '86. And I do go through the malls, and people say, "Hi, Ed," "Hi, Senator." I still get that, and I respect. I'm really happy with that. And I was never involved in anything tainted, even though we had the indictment of the month in the '70s. Never once was I tainted with anything at all. So I just like to remember it as a senator and House member who did his job, and I can't take credit for. I'll tell you what I'll take credit for. I'll take credit for constituent work. I had a lot of constituents that would call me and ask me to help them, and there were things I should not have won. One fellow, he was a state employee. He filled out his form as to what his retirement should be. He put it up on the mantle. There was a deadline to have it in, and he died. He never sent it in. And his wife called me, and they really had no right to it. It was, he just didn't do it. And I won. And I won many times on constituent work that I had no reason to win. I'd have to say, I'd like to be remembered as someone that I was available. If they wanted to find me, I was there. I was available. I like to say that. I like to be remembered as the senator who was, and the House member. We're talking about Houses now, right? I don't remember, the House member, the senator who was there for the constituents.
Mm-hmm. My last question. Do you have
this will be a dilly if this is the last one.
Well, do you have any advice for new members that would just be starting their careers? Anything that they could avoid as far as pitfalls, or any good advice, good sound advice? As somebody who's been there and done that.
The pitfalls, they won't have the pitfalls I did, because I'm sure the party is not as strong as it was, and they won't have the leadership beating on them as I did, so I won't have to tell them to avoid that. Just go there with the idea of dedication. Read the bills, read all the bills. Research the bills. Do the job for the constituents. Remember them back home, and think of it if I would tell them, when they're sitting, voting, yes or no with the switch. Pretend there are 240,000 constituents up in that balcony, all looking down on you. I'm talking to those who were them. Think of it that there are 240,000 constituents who are just looking right down on you. What, and say, now, how's he voting? Is he voting yes or no? What do you do? Look at it that way, like that they're right behind you. And also look at it that my grandmother, who was really poor, but no one knew it, who had to pinch pennies. Now we're going back in history. Mm-hmm. But when you do vote for legislation, think of your grandmothers, who had to pinch pennies. Did they have enough money for this and for that? So when you're spending the taxpayers' money, think of your grandmother who had trouble making ends meet, but you didn't know it. She kept it a secret. So be conservative. Don't waste it. Yeah, that's their money. It's not yours. It's theirs. So yeah, that's what I would give them advice. Yeah, but they don't need advice from me. From what I've seen, when they get elected, they'll do the job. They'll do the job. Yeah, and if they don't, people will throw them out. Just like in Pittsburgh, three incumbent councilmen. I don't know if you're aware of this. 3 incumbent council members in Pittsburgh just got defeated. Just got defeated. 3 incumbents. That's rare. So if you think the people aren't watching, you're mistaken. So a future House member, future politician of all office, they're watching. They're watching. And the news media is watching. And they're going to lie, but they're still watching. So yeah, do the job. Do the job. And now I can do it as I did it. When I get up in the morning and I shave, I can look in the mirror and I have no regrets. None. Zero.